This morning I poured myself some coffee, the kind I thought would kickstart the day. I even imagined pairing it with a slice of cake from last night. But when I opened the frig, my mom, without hesitation, smiled and said, "Oh, I gave it to your hungry dog." I stared at her like, "Seriously?" and argued, "Mom, he's not just a mutt, he's my dog." She laughed, and I sighed. That's my mom for you, sweet most days. Stubborn on others. One day, I'll make enough money to buy cakes just for my pets. Anyway, enough about cake. Let's talk about the ride that changed my whole evening. Asterisk, the sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink as I drove down a nearly empty country road. Music was low in the background, my thoughts drifting to what I'd eat for dinner. That's when I noticed her standing by a car, pulled over on the shoulder, waving both arms frantically. At first, I wasn't sure. Was it an emergency? Was it some scam? But something about her desperation made me slow down. As I rolled to a stop, she stepped forward, her son by her side. He looked about 8 or 9, restless, tossing small stones into the dirt. I rolled my window down a crack. "Everything okay, ma'am?" I asked cautiously. She leaned in slightly, brushing her hair back. "We ran out of gas," she said flatly, like it was my fault. I glanced at her carb top, who'd slightly dented, definitely not going anywhere. Easy fix, I thought. "No problem," I said. "I can drive you both into town, grab some fuel, and bring you back here." She nodded, though not with gratitude, more like expectation. Meanwhile, her son picked up a handful of gravel and hurled it into the road. A car zipped by at 60 miles per hour, stones scattering across the asphalt. "Hey, champ!" I called out. "Don't do that, it's dangerous!" The mom snapped her head toward me, her expression hardening. "Don't you speak to my son like that?" she barked. I froze for a second. Wow. Instead of correcting him, she was defending him. That was red flag number 1. But I'd already committed. Against my better judgment, I unlocked the doors. They climbed in? And I knew right then this wasn't going to be just another quick good deed ride. Asterisk, the instant they settled in, the car's air changed. The kid sprawled across the back seat like it was his personal trampoline. The mom snapped her seatbelt with a theatrical sigh, scanned the floor mats, and curled her lip. "Why is your car so dirty?" she said, as if she'd discovered a crime scene. "Work boots," I answered, keeping my voice neutral. "Dust builds up. You should clean it." Noted. Before I could say another word, her hand darted to the center console and lifted my phone like a magpie finding something shiny. My battery died. "I need to call someone." "Go ahead," I said, trying to stay zen. "Speaker's fine." She didn't just go on speaker. She broadcast. "Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?" The volume made my eardrums flinch. She repeated everything twice, like she was narrating to a stadium. The kid, meanwhile, discovered the window button and rode it up, down, like a carnival ride. "Hit Bud's seat belt," I said, easing off the gas as he launched himself forward between the front seats to peek at the road. "Sit back for me." "Yeah." The mom gave him a perfunctory shove. "Get back!" But the kid ignored her and wrapped an arm around my headrest, his breath fogging the windshield. "Dude, seatbelt." I tried again. Gentler. "I don't want you getting hurt." "He's fine," the mom muttered into the phone. "We're fine." "I'm not," I said quietly. Traffic blurred by fast. Close. My palms tightened on the wheel. The mom's conversation stumbled into irritation. First at her dead phone, then at useless gas stations, then at me for breaking 2. Hard never mind that her son's face was inches from the dash. "Buckle up," I said, this time firmer. The kid stared me down for a solid 3 seconds, then slumped back with a groan and clicked the belt. Small victories. I focused on the road. I reminded myself why I stopped. Because it was the right thing to do. But the ride was turning into a slow drip of disrespect, tiny cuts that sting more than a single blow. I counted streetlights. like lifelines. Town wasn't far. I could already make out the blue and white sign of the gas station, shining like a finish line. Almost there, I said. Finally, she replied. And it sounded like a verdict. Asterisk, I pulled into the forecourt and parked beside the pumps. The fluorescent canopy hummed, the kind of light that makes everything look a little too honest. The mom folded her arms, chin up, eyes on me like I was a valet who'd kept her waiting. You going to get it? She asked. Get what? I played dumb. The gas, she said, as if it were obvious. What else? I breathed in the scent of petrol and rubber. I could have argued. Instead, I swallowed the retort and walked inside. The cashier theme, tired, with a name tag that said, Leo looked up from a crossword. I asked for a 5L jerry can! He placed it on the counter like he'd done it 1,000 times. I paid, filled it outside, watched the numbers tick, smelled the sharp tang of fuel and the faint sweetness of spilled soda drying near the pump. When I returned to her side of the car, she rolled her window down an inch like I was the suspicious one. The kid had his cheek against the glass, fogging a cloud and tracing shapes. Hey, I said, raising the can a little. It's hot. Want your son to pick an ice cream while I sort this? Her face shifted suspicion first, then a crack of surprise. Then the kind of smile you give when you think something might finally be going your way. Go on then, she told the kid, and for the first time he brightened. He shot out of the car like a fired arrow. We walked in together. The freezer door squealed. The kid pressed his face to the foggy glass, scanning neon wrappers like they were precious stones. He debated flavors out loud, turned choices into declarations. She hovered, transformed, pleased, relaxed, almost normal. I rested the jerry can on the counter and leaned to Leo. Hold this for a sec. Need to grab my phone from the car, my card's in it. Leo nodded, unconcerned. I gave the mom a quick, harmless smile. 2 minutes! She didn't look at me. She was busy negotiating sprinkles. 2 minutes was all I needed. Asterisk. I stepped out into the evening's flat light and the hiss of tires on damp pavement. The sky was the color of old denim. I walked to my car without hurry, slid in, and let the seats settle me like a memory. The engine started with an easy cough. I checked the mirror's reflex. Not doubt. Through the plate glass window, I saw them. The mom at the freezer with her son now triumphantly, holding a popsicle like a trophy. Leo scanning the counter. The jerry can sitting right there. A red plastic monument to my helpfulness. I turned the wheel, felt the thrum of the steering column. My heartbeat steadied into the rhythm of the engine. This wasn't rage. It wasn't pettiness. It was balance. The car rolled forward. I passed the window just as the mom turned her head. Our eyes met for the briefest flicker. A half-second click of recognition that arrived too late for her and just in time for me. Her eyes widened. She said something and pointed. The words fogged on the glass and disappeared. Then I was at the exit, indicator on, the road opening like a ribbon. As I pulled out, the station's lights cast long white bars across my dashboard. In the rear view, the automatic doors parted with a slow hydraulic exhale. The kid burst out first, clutching his ice cream. The mom followed, shouting. I couldn't hear the words, only the shape of them, jagged and furious. I didn't speed. I merged. I became one more car in the flow of evening traffic, a slipstream of brake lights and intentions. There's an art to leaving some people exactly where they belong, with the consequences they earn. At the next light, I laughed quiet, disbelieving, relieved. The absurdity of it bloomed into something round and weightless. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't argued. I'd just declined to carry their chaos any farther. By the time the light turned green, the gas station was another scene in a city full of them. I got home to a soft-lit kitchen and a sink that needed a rinse. The evening settled around the house like a blanket pulled up to the chin. My mother called from the other room, asking if I'd found the cake. I grinned. You gave it to the dog, remember? I did, she said. Half guilty? He looked hungry. He always looks hungry, I said, scratching the dog behind the ears. He blinked slow, absolved of all cake crimes. Later, I told the story, how the woman waved me down. How the kid threw rocks towards speeding cars. How she criticized the dirt and commandeered my phone. How the seatbelt battle took 3 tries. I described the gas station's hard light, the red jerry can, the freezer door, squeal, the perfect timing of popsicles, and petty justice. When I reached the part where I drove away, the room exploded into hand-over-mouth laughter. The kind that peels stress off the day like old wallpaper. Wasn't that harsh? Someone asked. Eventually. Maybe, I admitted. But I didn't leave her in danger. I left her at a gas station with fuel, a cashier, and a phone. She left me in danger when she let her kid lob rocks at cars and crawl between seats. Courtesy is a 2-way lane if you block both sides. Don't be surprised when someone takes the first exit. Silence followed the comfortable kind. The kind that says everyone gets it. I rinsed my mug, set it to dry, and felt that small click of internal alignment when the world makes a rare kind of sense. It cost me 20 minutes and an ice-cold nerve. And I earned something that doesn't fit on a receipt. I went to bed with the window cracked. Night moved through the blinds in thin silver bars. Somewhere, maybe. A woman told a different version of the evening one where a rude driver abandoned... Maybe. But stories have centers of gravity, and this one didn't orbit her. It orbited a simple correction. If you borrow someone's kindness, don't spend it like it's endless. Best drive ever. Asterisk. All right, folks. By now, some of you must be thinking, man, these stories are long time to sip some coffee. Don't worry. I've got you covered. Take a quick breather while you're at it. Let me throw a fun USA-based question at you guys. What's the craziest excuse you've ever given your boss to skip work? Answer down in the comments. I'm curious to see who's brave enough to share. Okay, coffee sip done. Let's roll into the next story. This one's about a boss who thought he was untouchable until karma parked right outside his side chick's house. *8 years ago. I was part of a Christian missionary organization. We weren't a massive group, more like a traveling team that moved from country to country, offering help, we're recruiting, volunteering, supporting local churches. That season, our mission took us to China. There were 12 of us in total, 6 guys, 6 girls. The organization rented us 2 apartments. One for the men, one for the women. They weren't luxurious, but they were comfortable enough. Thin mattresses, squeaky fans, kitchens just big enough for one person at a time, and fridges that always seemed too small. We each got a weekly allowance, meant to cover food, travel, and the basics. The deal was, everyone handled their own groceries and cooking, though sometimes we pooled together for meals. At first, it worked well. We shopped in the crowded markets, tried out street food, struggled with a language barrier, but laughed our way through it. Those early weeks felt like summer camp for adults. Long walks through narrow streets lit with neon signs. Late-night conversations about faith and life, swapping stories about home. It was new, exciting, and everyone seemed to be pulling their weight. But good things rarely stay perfect. The first hint of trouble was small. A missing apple! A carton of milk that seemed lighter than yesterday. At first, we brushed it off. Maybe someone forgot they'd already eaten. Maybe a roommate borrowed a sip or 2. But then it happened again. Cereal boxers that emptied faster than they should. Peanut butter jars with the lid left crooked. Orange juice cartons mysteriously half full in the morning. By the 3rd week, whispers started. Hey, did you eat my bread? No! I swear! Are you sure? I just bought it yesterday. Yeah. Why would I lie about bread? We all knew what was happening. Someone was stealing food. One evening, we decided to call a meeting in the guy's apartment. The girls came over too, because their food had gone missing as well. We sat cross-legged on the floor, passing around mugs of cheap green tea. Look, our team leader said, clearing his throat. We're not here to accuse anyone. But this can't go on. Whoever's been taking food, it needs to stop We're all on budgets. We all work hard for what little we have. Everyone nodded. Eyes darted around the circle. Nobody spoke up! But inside, we all had the same thought. We suspected the same person. Swiper. Swiper wasn't his real name, but the nickname stuck almost instantly. He was a peculiar guy, socially awkward, with a weird sense of humor that sometimes made us laugh and sometimes made us cringe. He'd carry hand sanitizer everywhere, pumping it into his palms every few minutes, scrubbing like he was preparing for surgery. He wiped down counters obsessively, avoided touching door handles directly, and yet he'd still shake hands without hesitation, spreading his clean. Something about him just didn't fit. And now, with food disappearing, the spotlight naturally fell on him. Our leader even spoke to him privately. Later, he told us Swiper had denied everything. Swore up and down it wasn't him. But none of us were convinced. The thefts continued. Eggs gone, noodles vanishing, drinks disappearing. It became a running joke among us, though the humor was edged with frustration. If you can't find your lunch, better ask Swiper. Hide your snacks. Swiper's hungry. We never said it to his face, but the tension was there. Every time he walked into the kitchen, someone's eyes followed him. Every time a fridge door closed, someone checked their shelf. Weeks passed like this. The problem didn't go away. If anything, it got worse. And then one night, everything changed thanks to Peter, our Texan teammate. Peter didn't make announcements. He made weather. You didn't hear about his ideas so much as feel the pressure drop and sense a storm rolling in. Big guy! Broad shoulders, boots that announced him half a second before he turned a corner. He had that Texas drawl that could turn a compliment into a lullaby and an insult into a lullaby with barbed wire in it. He'd watch the missing food drama play out, like a slow leak in a tire. At first, he'd joked. Then he'd labeled everything with a Sharpie like a dad packing kids' lunches. Then he'd moved his groceries to a battered cooler he kept under his bed. Even that hadn't worked. Whoever was taking things had no shame and, apparently, no fear of dust bunnies. That night, after another mysteriously light carton of juice and a vanishing sleeve of crackers, Peter closed the fridge, set both hands on the counter, and exhaled like a bull who'd just spotted a red cape. That's it, he said. I was rinsing a pan, water running over my knuckles. That's what? He tilted his head, listening to the thin apartment walls, as if they could eavesdrop back. A couple of our teammates were in the living room, arguing amiably about a movie, and someone down the hall had started practicing a hymn on a cheap guitar. The girls' apartment was quiet. We'd heard they were holding a prayer circle because someone's mom back home was sick. It was one of those evenings when the city outside felt far away, and our little world felt taped together by routines and inside. Jokes. Peter's eyes had a shine to them the look he got. Right before he decided to do something bold, usually involving manual labor or hot sauce. I'm done asking. Nice, he said. If the snake won't stop biting, you cut the grass so you can see it. I think there's a proverb in there somewhere, I said, turning the tap off. I got one better, he said, and pulled open the fridge like a magician, about to reveal a dove. The orange juice carton sat on the top shelf, innocent, sweating a little in the humid air. He pointed at it like it owed him money. Boys! He called into the living room. Family meeting. Boots thumped. Chairs scraped. Two of the guys, Aaron and Micah, drifted in, still mid-debate about whether a certain actor was overrated. Devin, our resident peacemaker, followed with a dish towel thrown over his shoulder like a bartender in a quiet Western saloon. Peter planted a palm on the counter. I'm gonna say this once, and if anyone's got a better idea, I'm all ears. But I am not losing another ounce of groceries to the phantom of the fridge. The phantom's not very phantom, Micah muttered. He's just sanitary. We all knew what he meant. No one said the name. Peter nodded at the carton again. I am going on now. Don't y'all faint piss in my orange juice? The kitchen went sculpture still. Somewhere in the building, a toilet flushed. On the street, a moped puttered by like a fly with ambition. Aaron blinked. Like, metaphorically? Nope, Peter said cheerfully. Biologically. Devon put the towel down, his instinct to mediate kicking in. Peter, man, I get the frustration, but are we sure this is proportional? Proportional, Peter said, spreading his arms. Brother, I have tried diplomacy. I have tried sanctions. I have tried writing my name in capital letters like Moses on the tablets. The man keeps drinking my juice. Micah pinched the bridge of his nose. This is insane, sir, Peter said with a courtly little bow. This is Texas! He looked at each of us in turn, making sure we were tracking. I am not asking y'all to drink any. I am not hiding the ball. I will inform everyone in this apartment and the ladies next door. All but one. If a certain someone continues to steal after being warned by the universe itself, that is a choice. And choices have flavors! He said it so calmly, so logically, that the absurdity began to tilt toward inevitability. My brain tried to throw up roadblocks, ethics, grossness. That vague sense of missionary dignity we were supposed to maintain, but every argument ran into the same brick wall we'd been taken advantage of for weeks, and the thief wasn't just hungry. He was arrogant. Devon tried again. What if he gets sick? People drink worse on reality TV, Peter said. He won't die. He'll just learn. Petty? Yes. But effective? Aaron leaned on the counter. What if someone else like one of us accidentally takes a sip? That, Peter said, is why I'm telling you now. He looked at me. You'll tell the girls? I'll tell them, but use code. We don't want this becoming an official policy. Fair, Peter said. He picked up the orange juice carton with a reverence I'd only seen him show for barbecue. Gentlemen, he announced, I'll be right back. Please don't, Micah began. But Peter had already disappeared down the hall to the bathroom, humming a country song under his breath. In the pause that followed, we stared at the fridge like it had sprouted fangs. The guitar down the hall stopped mid. From somewhere outside, a vendor shouted in Mandarin about skewers and spices. The apartment's fan ticked. Devon finally spoke. We're really doing this. We're not doing anything, I said, conscience and curiosity wrestling in my voice. Peter is, we're just witnesses. Accessories after the fact, Aaron said, which is also a crime in some places. Micah massaged his temples. Ethically, this is shady. Comedically, this is unparalleled. The bathroom door clicked open. Peter returned, bright as sunrise, and slid the carton back into the fridge like a grenade into a safe. He turned to us with the air of a mayor unveiling a new town ordinance. It is done, he announced. We all made the same involuntary face the one humans make when biology becomes too vivid. Peter laughed. All right, he said. Businesslike now. Spread the word. Drink at your own peril. Everyone gets the memo except one person. We keep food sharing normal if you ask. You get, but my juice. Untouchable. Label it, Aaron said weakly. Peter grinned and pulled a marker from his pocket. On the carton, he wrote, in block letters, Peter. Then beneath it, smaller, do not touch. He capped the marker with a flourish. That should do. Devon exhaled. You're serious? As a Sunday sermon, Peter said, and listen, I ain't proud. I ain't bragging, but I am tired of being stolen from. The Lord may say, turn the other cheek, but he didn't say, hand them your orange juice. I got a reluctant laugh. The tension lifted a notch. We drifted back to the living room in a daze. The way you walk after watching a magic trick you can't quite reconstruct. I ducked next door to the girls' apartment under the polite pretense of borrowing dish soap. Their place smelled like peppermint tea and shampoo. Two of them were journaling at the table. The third, Ruth, cracked the door open wider when she saw me. Dish soap, she asked. Also an announcement, I said, lowering my voice. Peter has set a trap. Within a minute, I'd explained it. The code, the caution, the do not touch label. There was a chorus of horrified giggles, hands over mouths. The kind of laughter that doubles as stress relief. "Tell him that's barbaric," one of them said, and then added, "But also tell him I'm proud." Ruth shook her head, eyes wide. "Do you think it'll work?" I think," I said, "that a certain person has never believed consequences exist, and consequences just enrolled in the program." Back in our apartment, the night resumed its shape. Dishes were washed. The guitar found its chord again. Someone queued up an old sitcom on a laptop, the laugh track spilling down the hall like carbonated water. Peter made a sandwich big enough to have its own zip code and ate it over a plate. Careful crumbs. Eyes on the fridge with the sheriff's vigilance. We went to bed later than we should have. The way mission teams always do, talking in doorways, stretching a good mood to its last inch. When I finally lay down, the city's heat pressed against the window like a warm hand. Sleep took me with one lingering image. A white carton behind a refrigerator bulb, sitting like bait in a cartoon, except the trap wasn't a spring or a snare. It was a secret. Morning brought the usual chorus. Alarm chimes, the kettle clicking on, footsteps in the hall. I stepped into the kitchen and opened the fridge as casually as I could manage. The cotton sat there. Same spot, same label. It looked a hair lower. Maybe. I couldn't tell if it was paranoia or measurement. Peter joined me. Hair mussed, boots already on. He didn't look directly at the juice. He looked past it, the way a hunter pretends not to see tracks. The morning after Peter's grand reveal, the atmosphere in the apartment was different. It wasn't tension. Exactly, it was something heavier. Like the air after a thunderstorm when the lightning has struck and the smell of burnt ozone still lingers. Nobody wanted to say much, but everyone felt it. We went about our usual routine, making instant coffee, frying eggs, grabbing toast, but there was an undercurrent of nervous laughter in the way we glanced at the fridge. The carton was still in there, sitting innocently on the shelf. But now, it wasn't just juice. It was a weapon, a monument, a reminder of what had happened the night before. Swiper was the only one who didn't appear at breakfast. Normally, he'd hover around, always nearby when food was involved. That morning, his door stayed shut. We could hear him pacing in his room, the floorboards creaking under his frantic steps, muttering angrily to himself. At one point, he banged something against the wall. Peter just sipped his coffee, leaned back in his chair, and said nothing. The rest of us exchanged glances. We didn't know if we should feel proud of Peter or worried that he'd just detonated a bomb that none of us could defuse. As the days passed, it became clear that Swiper wasn't handling the humiliation well. The meltdown had broken something inside him. He avoided us, sometimes refusing to come into the kitchen unless he was sure no one else was there. If he heard laughter in the living room, he'd assume it was about him and snap, storming back into his room. He became jumpy, snapping at small things. One day, Aaron left a wrapper on the counter and Swiper exploded, screaming about hygiene germs and how careless everyone was. Another time, he accused Micah of deliberately moving his shoes. His paranoia was eating him alive, and his guilt was painted across his every word and action. Peter, though, didn't gloat. He didn't tease or even mention it again. That was the strange part. He simply carried on as if nothing had happened. But that calm silence was louder than mockery. Swiper knew. We knew. The message had been delivered, and there was no undoing it. Every time he saw Peter casually sipping water or eating breakfast, he'd flinch, as though Peter had supernatural power over him now. It wasn't just revenge, it was psychological warfare. And Peter had won without lifting another finger. But Swiper's behavior didn't stop at paranoia. It escalated. Instead of learning his lesson, he started spiraling in other ways. A week later, during one of our errands to the local market, he was caught pocketing snacks without paying. The vendor shouted after him, furious, and our team leader had to intervene to smooth things over. That night, we had another team meeting, and the leader confronted Swiper directly. He denied it again, face pale and sweaty, insisting the vendor was lying. None of us believed him. The evidence was too obvious. The frustration in the room was palpable. This wasn't just about food anymore. It was about integrity. Things only got worse. A few days later, word spread that Swiper had been skipping train fares by jumping the turnstiles. It wasn't just embarrassing. It was dangerous. If he got caught by officials, it could have jeopardized the whole team. And still, he didn't seem to care. The guilt and paranoia had twisted into recklessness. Eventually, our leader had no choice but to escalate things to the organization. Meetings were held. Phone calls made. The final decision came swiftly. Swiper would be sent home. His actions stealing from us, stealing from markets, skipping fares were unacceptable. And truthfully, no one argued. Even those of us who'd felt uneasy about. Peter's juice trap knew that Swiper had dug his own grave. The night before he left, the apartment felt strangely quiet. Swiper packed his things in silence, slamming drawers shut and muttering under his breath. He avoided our eyes, his face twisted with a mix of anger and shame. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered all the stolen meals. The denials. The tears he'd caused in team meetings when people were too frustrated to hold it in. And I remembered his screams the night Peter revealed the truth. Any sympathy evaporated. The next morning, Swiper was gone. Just like that, our fridge stayed full. Our meals stayed ours. The balance was restored. We didn't celebrate, but there was relief in the air, like a weight had lifted off our shoulders. And though none of us said it out loud, we all knew one thing. Peter's revenge had worked. Asterisk with Swiper gone. The apartment felt lighter in ways we hadn't expected. It wasn't just about food staying where we left. It was about the absence of tension. For weeks, every trip to the fridge had carried suspicion. Every laugh had risked becoming an argument. Every quiet moment had felt like the calm before another storm. But after his departure, that constant edge of conflict disappeared. We could cook meals without worrying about whether half our groceries would mysteriously vanish by morning. Breakfasts became communal again, with plates shared across the table and mugs of tea passed around freely. It was as if the house itself exhaled after holding its breath for too long. Peter never bragged about what he'd done. He didn't hold court or retell the story like a trophy. In fact, he hardly mentioned it again. But the rest of us remembered. The image of him standing in that kitchen, casually drinking from a carton he'd weaponized, was burned into our memories. It was shocking. Yes. Savage. Even. But it was also the moment Swiper's facade cracked. When his weeks of denial finally collapsed under the weight of his own panic. That was when the truth came out not through accusation, but through confession, disguised as hysteria. Some nights, when the team gathered to unwind, the story slipped into conversation again. It became a kind of inside joke, whispered in half smiles and head shakes. Don't steal food unless you're ready for consequences, someone would mutter, and the room would chuckle knowingly. We all understood the deeper truth. Peter's method was extreme, but it had exposed the rot we hadn't been able to prove. And though it left a bad taste in everyone's mouths, if not literal light had ended the problem, I'd be lying if I said there weren't moments of guilt. Late at night, lying on my thin mattress with the buzz of the fan overhead, I wondered if we'd gone too far. Was it fair to break someone so completely, even if they'd been in the wrong? Couldn't we have solved it another way? But every time those doubts crept in, I remembered Swiper's track record. The stolen food, the lies to our faces, the thefts from the market, the turnstile jumps that risked our entire team's reputation. He hadn't just been careless. He'd been reckless, selfish, and unrepentant. If Peter hadn't set that trap, maybe Swiper would still be sitting on our couch, stealing and lying, making the rest of us miserable. The organization officially wrote his dismissal as disciplinary removal due to repeated misconduct. It sounded professional, clinical, but to us, the truth was simpler. He had crossed too many lines. And Peter's trap was the breaking point that forced everything into the open. We didn't say this out loud, but in our private thoughts, we all gave Peter credit for doing what no one else had dared to do. He'd taken the risk, and it had worked. Years later, when I think back on that trip to China, it's not the tourist sites or the crowded markets that come to mind first. It's that cramped apartment. The smell of stir-fried noodles. The sound of cheap guitars being tuned in the hallway. And the night Peter turned an orange-juiced carton into a weapon of poetic justice. It was revenge at its pettiest and its purest disgusting, hilarious, and effective. If I had to rate it, I'd give the revenge 8 out of 10. 6 points for sheer creativity and brutality, and 2 extra for Peter's swagger and drinking it himself, proving his own point without flinching. The final 2 points. Those are missing because, deep down, a part of me knew it was a little too far. But then again, maybe that's what made it unforgettable. That, in the end, Swiper didn't just steal food. He stole trust, peace, and respect. And Peter's revenge gave all of that back to us in one unforgettable night. It wasn't noble. It wasn't clean. But it was justice served cold end with pulp. Coffee's finished. Stories told. Now here's where you guys come in. If you've ever had a crazy run-in with a stranger on the road, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear them. And hey, if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so more people can enjoy these revenge tailies. Who knows? Your story might be the next one featured here on J.Reddit.